All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're getting into something really mind-bending, an idea from Thomas Kuhn's incredible book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. We're digging into Chapter 9, all about the nature and the necessity of these scientific revolutions.
So Kuhn starts us off with this really provocative question. Why on earth should we think of a massive shift in science, like going from Newtonian physics to Einstein's, as being like a political revolution? On the surface, that sounds a little crazy, right? But stick with me, because this comparison is the absolute key to his entire way of thinking.
Okay, so before we go any further, we gotta get one key term straight. Kuhn defines a scientific revolution as a non-cumulative episode, and that one word, non-cumulative, changes the whole game. It means science isn't just about adding new facts on top of old ones, like stacking bricks. It's more like we're tearing down the whole building and starting over with a completely new and incompatible blueprint. It's a total reboot.
And that's exactly what this is all about. We're going to use this idea of a political revolution, something we can all kind of picture, to see how science really works when it makes those huge, groundbreaking shifts.
Now, it's super important to get this. Kuhn isn't just saying they're kinda similar. This isn't just a clever metaphor. He's arguing that the actual process, the deep-down structure of how these changes happen, it's fundamentally the same, whether you're talking about scientists in a lab or revolutionaries in the streets.
So where does a revolution begin? Any revolution? Well, it always starts with one thing, a crisis. That feeling that things just aren't working anymore. It's the absolute first step for any kind of radical change.
And here's where that parallel gets really clear. Think about politics. A crisis happens when enough people start to feel like the government just can't handle the big issues anymore, right? Now look at science. It's the exact same dynamic. A crisis begins when the current big theory, the paradigm, keeps running into weird results it just can't explain. Kuhn calls these anomalies. In both cases, the whole system starts to feel broken.
And let's be really clear here. This feeling, this sense that things are malfunctioning, it isn't just some small hiccup. It's the essential ingredient. You absolutely have to have it. Without that deep, nagging feeling that the old way is fundamentally busted, a revolution just doesn't happen.
Okay, so you've got a crisis. What happens next? Well, the community, whether it's a country or a field of science, starts to fracture. It splits right down the middle. And at that point, all the normal ways you'd argue or solve problems, they just get thrown out the window. You can almost see the steps play out, can't you? The crisis gets worse, people lose faith in the old way of doing things, and then, bam, you've got two opposing sides. You've got the old guard desperately trying to hold on, and the revolutionaries pushing for something totally new. And the debate between them? It stops being a normal argument. It moves outside the old rules and becomes something else entirely.
And this is such a key insight. I mean, think about it. In politics, you can't really use the rules of the old government to vote that government out of existence. It just doesn't work that way. And it's the same in science. You can't use the old theory's own logic to prove it's completely wrong. Why not? Because the very rules of the game are what everyone is fighting about.
All right, this next part is where Kuhn's idea gets really wild, and honestly, pretty profound. He says that when these two sides are arguing, it's not just a disagreement over the facts, it's deeper. They are effectively operating in different realities. It's like they're not even speaking the same language.
And Kuhn puts it perfectly with this quote. What happens is, each side just uses its own worldview to justify its own worldview. The defenders of the old theory argue from within their framework, and the challengers argue from within their new framework.
So what does that lead to? A completely circular debate. You see, there's no neutral referee that can both appeal to. There's no scientific Supreme Court. Because the thing they're disagreeing on includes the very rules of what counts as proof. The whole standard for judging is part of the argument.
So, if you can't prove it with pure logic, how does one side ever win? Well, in politics, it's about persuasion, right? Winning hearts and minds. In science, Kuhn says it's something he calls conversion. Now, data and logic are still super important, of course, but they aren't enough to force someone to change their mind. It takes this kind of aha moment, a leap of faith where suddenly you just see the world differently.
So this whole process sounds pretty messy, right? Crisis, polarization, circular arguments. You might be thinking, is this really how science works? And Kuhn's answer is a resounding yes. This messy, revolutionary process is absolutely necessary. It's the only way for science to get unstuck from a path that's leading nowhere. It's this chaos that lets us junk an old worldview and truly see the universe in a new way. It's how the biggest breakthroughs happen.
And this all leaves us with one last, big, unsettling question. If science doesn't just march forward, neatly adding fact upon fact, but instead jumps from one worldview to a completely incompatible one, then what does that say about our whole idea of getting closer to some final, objective, capital T truth? Yeah, that's the real bombshell Kuhn drops on us.